Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are in for a treat today. I'm bringing in a top guest. He's a couple minutes late at the moment, but he will join us soon enough. I just got to say, I just got to go and hit live on. So the other Paul will be joining us in a few minutes. He's just a bit late. In fact, I was almost late as well, but there's plenty of time for the other Paul to join us. The topic will be sacralism. He's basically teamed up with a guy named Josh Webon, and he's gone after Jamila White, also known as James White. Here, let me share this on X. And here we go. Oh. Oh, what the? Okay. Whoa. Live with all right. There we go. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. We are so back. Okay. So yeah, the other Paul will be joining us in a couple minutes. He is just late there, you know, how those Australians are. Let me show you in the meantime the book I'm reading. I'm often of the opinion that we apologists can't be just reading these, you know, church history, Bible commentary, academic books all the time. We need to read fiction. Let me show you the fiction I'm reading right now. I am reading the first Jack Reacher book, Lee Child. These Jack Reacher books are so based. They're so based. You need to read them. And oh, frick! Wait a minute. Hello.
Hey, big man. I only just got here, so you're all good.
I'm just telling everyone that they need to read the Lee Child Jack Reacher books. Have you read these books?
No, I have not.
Oh, they're based, man. They're so freaking based. And right now, it's a good thing I brought a drink here. Hey, Paul?
Classic
yes,
Alan Rule moment.
Yes, your Alan Rule impression. I remember that. So Paul, how are you? How are things down under?
Mate, going well. We are just now getting into the winter season, so it's getting a little bit cold here, but certainly nothing compared to when Canada gets into winter, that's for sure. So that's going on. I'm working on a few different videos, including my first What is Anglicanism video, but also I've recorded, and tonight I'm just editing and then scheduling to upload my response to Cameron Bertuzzi on Sola Scriptura. It was like a true F tier video. It was truly terrible. And it, even to the point where even like Wagner and other like good Roman apologists are like, yeah, no, this sucks. There are way better arguments. So that's been happening. That's been going well. And also noticing that the Holy Reverend Father in God, Dr. White, is live right now. So that's going to be cool to watch that after this.
Oh yeah. Jamila is live right now. Yeah,
Jamila.
yeah, Sam Shamoon gave us that nickname. You know,
he's got some funny ones. I'll give him that.
Yeah. Well, do you know what he's calling Jay Dyer now?
Oh no, what's he calling him? Gay liar.
Gay liar.
Is that actually it?
Yeah, gay liar. Yeah.
Bro, I came up with that one. I mean, like it's easy. So I came up with that one too, though.
Yeah. So yeah, I've not taught the Sam in some time myself, but you know, it's always fun. So for those who don't know, the other Paul is an Australian Anglican apologist. He's the one who brought you the Newman Flex tape commercial. which is legendary.
All-time classic.
Yeah, and he's been doing this for a long time. He's been on the channel before. I've been on his channel talking about, I think, the Crusades or something else.
Yep.
And we talked about our favorite church history books or sources. Yeah, and church history, that's coming into our discussion today, because we are going to talk about, wait for it, sacralism. More importantly, is sacralism based? I think it's based. The other Paul thinks it's based.
Yep. So
Josh
based
Webben
that
thinks it's based. Jamila,
so based that I made that thumbnail of me just having a selfie with whoever's getting burned.
Yeah. It's like, hey, William Tyndale, what's up? You know,
I don't even know who those guys are.
I don't know who it is either, but
they might be some good Protestant martyrs, but obviously it's for all I know. But
they might be some Jesuits under Queen Elizabeth. You never know.
Okay, then in that case, that would just be me, unironically.
Sacralism sounds scary. It's not that scary. We'll tell you a bit about it. All right. Really so I think we should start. What is sacralism?
So sacralism, I actually have a synthesized definition written up, and it is actually based on, well, for one, it's based, but second, it's based on Dr. White's own definitions, or like he never really gives in one place a clear, simple definition, but I think he can quite easily. He is nonetheless quite clear about what sacralism entails, and so having watched a bunch of his stuff where he talks about, I kind of synthesized a definition which I actually gave in the presentation on Right Response Ministries, and so that definition is a form of civil polity in which there is a formal relationship between the state and an established church, such that the state may exercise authority over the affairs of that established church, and the church enjoys by law a supremacy of privileges over and above all other religions and sects. Now, the part of the state having authority of the church, that's got to nuance that a bit for integralism specifically, but generally speaking, you'll have the state doing whatever. And then from that, in principle, these other religions and sects may be suppressed to some degree, including and up to total criminalization, depending on what is most prudent at a given time. Further, national citizenship and official membership in the established church are often, but not always, tied together. So that's the definition I give.
That's a good definition. Essentially, the state backs one religion and it gives it a bunch of privileges. Now, it does not necessarily suppress others, although it can and often has.
Yep.
But there's essentially one religion promoted by the state. And as you pointed out, this is prevalent in Christian history, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like you talked a bit about the early church. Can you possibly give us a few more examples? Like a few examples for those who haven't seen your thing on Josh Webben's stream.
Yeah, Joel Webben, Holy Reverend Baptist Joel Webben. But so that presentation, the cool thing is the notes I had for that presentation, which if people actually want to read the notes, I actually, with all my citations, I put it up on my website. But the funny thing is that already was quite summarized, because there is a lot of evidence out there, like written sources, archaeological, this, that, and the other. So that was already quite summarized. But even in the presentation, despite how long it went, I still ended up just skipping over some bits, which you'll notice if you were to watch my presentation alongside the notes. I skipped over a few bits just to make sure we were keeping on time. But in essence, I cited I principally focused on two periods, one being the Imperial Church age in the 4th and 5th centuries. So that would be from Constantine largely up to Theodosius I, although I think I alluded to some later events. And then after that, I went to the English Reformation specifically. And what I basically argued from both of those cases is that doing the work of history, chasing cause to effect, or more so especially looking at the effect and tracing back the causes, we see that one of, if not the principal cause of the dominance of Christianity and in the case of the English Reformation, Anglicanism, so real Christianity, the principal cause in both of those cases was state sponsorship and proliferation, and alongside that, the suppression of competitors. Obviously, that does not mean, contrary to what one especially lively commenter on that video likes to think, that that actual preaching and debate was not a factor, nor is it saying that that wasn't even a critical factor. A lot of people seem to think that if you describe one thing as a critical factor, you therefore deny that other things are a critical or essential factor, which is just ridiculous. So obviously, the bishops being personally stalwart in their orthodoxy, in preaching it loudly, especially to the right people, which I think I did say in the stream, that is an essential factor. Obviously, Christianity wouldn't have survived without that. But what I did argue is that what made Christianity so dominant and widespread was principally the state involvement. And so I looked at the key evidence for that in the early church period. And then I also looked at the same for the period of the English Reformation. I could have done the Reformation writ large, but it was good just to focus on a particular region, especially since the English Reformation is especially known for sacralism, for the involvement of the state in order to reform the church. Now, obviously, what I also try to say in that stream is that I think I might have said it once or twice, but both of the examples, I'm obviously quite sympathetic to. You're only sympathetic to one of the examples, but ultimately, and I think I did say this in the stream, what I tried to communicate was not necessarily, these are good things, especially if you're a Romanist or an Easterner friend watching, and obviously you wouldn't have liked the second one, but principally just to argue that, hey, if you prioritize the dominance of Christendom, this is how it was done. This is what worked. This worked. And so I would likewise say I'd probably say something similar with regard to, well, I mean, obviously the Roman tradition, obviously that was massively dominated and saturated in the Western Church, in massive part due to the power of the state under the Pope. That's an obvious fact, and that was extremely successful in that regard. So I'd even point to that example, but I chose two sympathetic examples for the state of for the sake of the stream.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't think James White would be too sympathetic to, say, to Pope Gregory VII, but he'd probably be a bit more akin to, see, the thing is, you talked about the Reformation, specifically English, but you pointed out a second ago that you could apply this to Germany, Switzerland, Scandinavia, like lots of countries, in pretty much every country that went Protestant, Protestant with help of the state, like
exactly.
And so you see James White, you've heard him say things like, the Reformation, he kind of almost talks about it as kind of like this celestial movement. Things were happening. You had the printing press. You had people going to ad fontes. Why can't you say that you had the clergy getting, the kings more involved in the church? Because that lends credence to the sacralism of the which he abhors. But the thing is, Protestantism, it's impossible to say, but there's a chance it wouldn't have survived without sacralism.
Oh, yeah. No, well,
do you agree with that? Or
yeah, I'd agree. Well, survive, at least, if by survive we include just a basic subsistence level underground movement, then that could have survived for a long time, perhaps even up to today, without the state. But that's the thing. That's like a very underground, highly suppressed movement. But in terms of it being successful with respect to flipping over large parts of Germany, Scandinavia, England, Switzerland, almost other places too, that would not have happened without state sponsorship. Not at all. The freedom that Dr. White now enjoys and the richness of Reformation thought and theology, notwithstanding how selective he has to be with it as a Baptist, all that stuff he enjoys and for which he sees a great benefit for the spread of the gospel, that's from the hand of the state. You can't deny that role, even though he is a Baptist. But the thing is, in the end, he's still self-proclaimed reformed. I mean, in the basic sense of eternal decree of God, justification by faith alone, great, but then he denies other essentials from the Reformed tradition. But anyway, he's all those things, and that would not have taken off, and there wouldn't have even been a ground for his Baptist movement to have even emerged at all, because that was in England, without sacralism, without the good Edward VI. I wouldn't say good Henry VIII, but Henry VIII, beautiful Queen Bess, James, the Caroline Kings, without them basically putting their boot on the old Roman tradition and Socinians and others and this like that, there wouldn't have been ground for the Baptists to even emerge at all. So you're welcome.
So I take it that in the 17th and 18th century, you would have been against the Jacobites then. Yeah,
of course, mate.
Yeah, because then the Church of England would have been suppressed by sacralism if Bonnie Prince Charlie would have won at the Battle of Culloden. But we're getting off topic here. So one critique that James White likes to make is at it's so tiring, and I think you gave a perfect response, like just perfect. This leads to nominalism. Once you kind of make it a state religion and you start putting in infant baptism, so people don't choose baptism, they're just born with it, or right after birth their parents give it to them, and this makes things it gives nominalism, and yeah, just say something about that.
Well, if I may commit a colossal equivocation fallacy really quickly, that's ironic coming from what appears to be a philosophical nominalist, being a memorialist, essentially, James White. But obviously, massive equivocation, not the same thing. So that argument I responded to by saying, well, that's not a unique phenomenon to a sacralist order where the faith is forcefully made, like the public culture. Now, first thing to respond to that is to say that even with all the nominalists, nonetheless, that public culture of the faith creates massive exposure for genuine believers to come to the faith. I don't know how he or anyone could deny that, because it's a very common thing, heck, even in scripture, but let alone even just common pastoral wisdom, that if you're a Christian and you create a Christian culture, like in your local friend circles, if you act Christian around them and you speak about your faith in that way, not in necessarily a forceful way, but just like you create a Christian air around your non-believing friends, that could open them up to the gospel. So we already accept that wisdom as pastoral practice. This is just establishing it like on a mass scale. So obviously that will work to bring many genuine believers. But second of all, granted, yes, there will be many nominalists. Guess what? The same will happen if a nation experiences a massive, like before the eschaton. So I'm going to grant postmillennialism for the moment here. I don't deny it, but I'm kind of agnostic. I'll grant postmillennialism, right? Where their whole thing is that before the second coming, there'll be mass conversions of all the nations to Christ. Okay, great. Granting that for the moment, before the eschaton, there could be a mass conversion of a nation through a brilliant, successful missional effort, right? Indeed, that has happened historically. Maybe not whether on the size of a massive nation or even just local communities, local regions. That has happened in history. So we can look to cases of such, and what ends up happening inevitably? Nominalism. Nominalism sets up. Why? Because even with a mass conversion where virtually everybody was like really piped and passionate for it, which is good, that's fantastic. We do want that. But inevitably, over generations, because there wasn't the same, because the same event isn't like perpetually happening, it's now just become the culture. It's calcified in that way, which is good. But inevitably, generations following, nominalist believers will follow. You'll have a dad or an old grandpa who's like, oh man, I remember when we had this revival, it's great. And he's still got that fire burning in him. But maybe his grandkid isn't as enthused. Maybe that grandkid could be a genuine believer if he's catechized rightly. But if not, then he could just end up being a nominalist. Like he's not hostile to the faith, but he's not really whatever. That's just normal. That's what happens. And importantly, that will happen. That equally has the liability of happening whether Christianity is enforced in the realm of public religion or after a mass conversion event. Both of those things will happen inevitably. That's just a fact. Now, one response I have been given to this is that, but in post-millennialism, the mass conversions, they won't succumb to nominalism because it'll be like the final thing before Christ comes, and then Christ will be all in all, so on and so forth. Everything will be legitimate. Now, two things. One, I said that for any mass conversion events before the eschaton, so before the eschaton, that won't happen. That won't be the case. But second, okay, let's grant post-millennialism. I like to use what's basically the philosophical zombie argument. Like I basically just thought of this, but it was Daniel Dennett. He basically said, imagine there's a human. He's an atheist philosopher, for people who don't know. Yeah. Imagine there's a human. It has all the features of humanity except consciousness, right? And so it's actually a really awesome genre of argument to really try to prick at a person's worldview. And in this case, I want to say, okay, I'm going to grant everything of post-millennialism. Imagine it, the whole post-mill eschatology. It's all true. But I then simply put in one extra premise. One of the ways in which mass conversion happens is through prior efforts of the state to mass proliferate the Christian faith and stamp out false religion by force. And I just simply say, why can't that be the case? I mean, you're already proposing a miracle of mass conversion without nominalism following. Why can't I do the same, but with state force? So them trying to bring up post-millennialism in that way would just fail. So I'll leave it at that. That's my response to that argument.
So James White, he brought up the Council of Nicaea II. Let's put that aside for a second. I want to throw another example of you at you, and I think this, because I think there's a different. I think Protestant, Catholic, and Eastern Orthodox sacralism are all kind of separate. Like there's certainly things that overlap for sure, but there's some like fine differences. And one critique that I would make, of course, James White didn't think about this, and I don't think he could. It's kind of a Catholic argument, but what happens if the state tries to promote heresy? Like, let me give you an example. Zeno's Henodicon, which promoted essentially a mono. You could be a Chalcedonian and accept it, but it's essentially a monophysite thing. Or you got the Ecthesis and the Typos in the 7th century, trying to enforce a version of monophysitism called monothelitism on the Chalcedonian populace. What would you say then?
I'd simply say, well, the same thing we already do in response to errant authority. We resist it, fight against it. It really is that simple. And obviously the implicit argument he tries to give with that is, but in that case, your authority is not working anymore. And so you'd have to say that you resisted. But now you're inconsistent. I mean, no, it's not inconsistent, because the argument is not simply any and all sacralist authority is legitimate and must be obeyed, period. That's not the argument. The argument is granting our worldview, our religion. That's critical. I mean, Dr. White's precept, he should know this. Starting with our worldview, it is good for us and for our worldview to take the power of the state and to proliferate it. Likewise, it is bad when a hostile worldview tries to do the same. So therefore, we should work towards gaining the reins of the state power and also work towards stopping others, hostile actors, from getting the same power. It's really not that hard. It's literally a direct analog to conventional warfare. When an enemy soldier fires at you, you don't complain to them, you don't like it when I shoot at you, but you're shooting at me. You're a hypocrite. What do you do about that? That's obviously, we recognize that's stupid, because warfare isn't about fairness. It's literally just a matter of winning. I want my side to win because of some greater cause or conquest or whatever. And you don't do that. When a guy is shooting at you, you duck and cover and you try to prevent him from harming you, and then you shoot back. because that's war. Likewise here with politics, I believe it is fundamentally true because he's been getting quite famous recently. The German jurist and political theorist Carl Schmitt saying that the fundamental elements of politics, or the fundamental dichotomy of politics, just as how good and evil or beauty and ugliness are the dichotomies of morality and aesthetics, for politics, the dichotomy is friend and enemy, just as a matter of fact. And so with politics, you're not playing, you don't give into the liberal, uppercase L liberal delusion of, oh, it's about fairness. No, it's not. It's literally about, I have this vision for the world. I want it to dominate politically. That's it. So it is cultural / political warfare. We're not pretending to be fair. We want obedience to our preferred authorities, but we will also happily resist bad authorities. It's that simple.
Well, okay. Now, this kind of ties in with the last question. Do you think the bishops or the top clergy of a state, a sacralist state, should be 100% in charge of doctrine, or should the politician in charge, the king, the whoever, the emperor, get involved in the doctrine?
Yeah, great question. This is where some more specifics of Anglican polity and civil government thought, where that really comes in. Ordinarily, yeah, that is up to the bishops. The bishops have to look over that themselves because that is their immediate domain. It's not immediately, emphasis on immediately, the domain of the king. Nonetheless, as John Jewell and others would say, particularly John Jewell, the king is nonetheless, quoting from Isaiah, a nursing father for the nation. And so if and when the king sees that the bishops are messing up in their job, his role is most certainly to intervene. So that's the key thing there. It's not that the king, he doesn't have the immediate role of governing the church in the sense of immediately making this or that doctrinal policy on the day, or this disciplinary thing, or administering the sacraments. Definitely not that. But he does have the role for when the need arises, when the bishops are not doing their job, he has to be able to step in and correct things.
So you would say that happened in the 1530s with Henry and I guess the Catholic bishops that became Anglican.
I mean, because Henry's reasoning, I mean, like, it wasn't, when you actually look into the history and the specifics of it, Henry's efforts were actually very understandable. Even if you are convinced ultimately that what he was seeking for was sinful, it's actually quite understandable because he wasn't getting a son, and that would really, really jeopardize the line of succession. The integrity
of the brand new Tudor dynasty that just came in after the War of the Roses. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Things were seriously in jeopardy. So there's that. But then also it appears that he may genuinely have thought that his marriage to Catherine was actually illegitimate because she's the widow of his brother. And so basically he commissioned the bishops to survey the universities across Europe and in England to get their opinion on the thing. But so TLDR, his efforts were like, it's quite complicated with Henry. But if we move forward a bit with Edward VI, Elizabeth II, their efforts were, because in the end he wasn't quite Protestant, Henry, but with those monarchs, they were quite Protestant. And so they were more targeted in their reformation of England to the Reformed Catholic tradition. And so for them, I would say that, yeah, absolutely, their efforts were very much legitimate.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing about King Henry VIII, what he believed is not really consistent with Roman Catholic or Anglicanism. He believed in kind of like an independent church with all the same theology as a Catholic church, with the exception of ecclesiology. Like he still believed in transubstantiation. He still believes in purgatory. He believes in the celibate priesthood. Like stuff only Roman Catholics believe in, but
so he was the first Anglo-Catholic.
Yeah, and I guess the like
but
the
just
purest
just
form of
minus the homosexuality.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's one thing you can't accuse that guy of.
He was not a homo. He was
He was
not.
not a homo. Yeah, you can. He's not Edward II. That's an interesting story. Look that guy up if you have a moment. But so the Catholic view, I want to contrast with the Catholic view, and this really comes out in the 11th century during the investiture controversy. I asked you in our private DMs if you had studied the investiture controversy, and you said you hadn't looked at it too in depth. So basically, is the state, regardless of the state, if it's England, France, Holy Roman Empire, Hungary, or Republic of Venice, you name it, they promote the church, they make the laws based on the church, they integrate the church into society, but they're not in charge of doctrine or appointing the bishops. And if I could take you back to the Henoticon, which was the document that promoted pseudo monophysitism. It was opposed by the Pope Felix, and Pope Felix told Acacius or he told Zeno, I can't remember, that a politician has, I'm paraphrasing obviously, a politician has no place determining doctrine in the church. And if you take a look at, say, the First Ecumenical Council, Council Nicaea, that's council Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox all love, right? We all love the Council of Nicaea. In that council, Constantine allowed the bishops to make up their mind, and then he's like, okay, this is the doctrine we'll support. But like you get on the further ecumenical councils, like Justinian, when he kidnaps Pope Vigilius, puts him under house arrest, he's like, condemn those documents, right? Like he's still working within the church. He knows the Pope has to make the decision, but he is really gaming the system at this point. He's gaming the system. Like he's doing everything he can. He's deposing and appointing new bishops left, right, and center. The whole thing was a nightmare.
Yep.
Then in the 7th century, and of course the Pope was hesitant to condemn the documents for not because he believed in Nestorianism, but the West would get the wrong impression. There's a whole story there. I'm not going to go into it streaming about that. But in the 7th century, with the ecthesis and the typos, again, it's the state trying to stand against it. The state's promoting the heresy. But in the case of the typos and the case of that and the case of the Council of Ephesus too, it's the emperor promoting something wrong, in this case the monophysite heresy, and the one that stops him all 3 times is the Pope, essentially. So I mean, I think that's an evidence for the Catholic view. Now, you would consider that bad sacralism. Like a sacralist is not going to say that all sacralism has been good. There's been bad sacralism, right?
Yeah, it's like a genus, and then there's particular instantiations of it.
Yeah, like if you say, like, I support this political party, and one of the guys in the political party cheats on his wife or something, that does not make it a bad party. It just means that there's a bad apple in the party. So that's what I think. And in terms of the emperor, once you get to the 12th century, the post-schism era, the Catholic view, where the bishops and the Pope handled the doctrinal stuff and the church management, and stay out, and the princes stay out of the doctrine. Once you get over to like the 12th century Byzantine Empire, you have the church you have the emperor deciding doctrine against the will of the bishops. I can back all this up. you have the emperor being called the high priest. I can quote you primary sources. You have patriarchs of Constantinople saying it's impossible to have a church without an emperor. You have the whole Arsenite schism thing. I don't know if you know the whole thing about the Arsenite schism, but it's essentially the patriarch excommunicates the emperor. So the excommunicated emperor removes the patriarch, replaces him with another patriarch who's his friend, and he gives him absolution. He's like, you're back in the church now. Like it got that bad in the East. So I think I do believe in sacralism, and I do think you make some good points, but I do think the Catholic version is supreme. That's my opinion. Your comment?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, you're in Rome. I'm in Anglicanism, so yeah, that's inevitable. I think I think there is still a fair bit of overlap with us in that.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Even in even in our view of the king's role, even then he still leaves the bishops to do their job ordinarily. We can see that in action even in the English Reformation. Like, I've been reading up a lot on the records of the convocations of Canterbury that were happening at the time in the 16th century. So the actual minutes directly, which very, very few people know about. So I found them. There's like a whole series that has the whole thing. It's actually incredible. Going back to like 12th or 11th century, something like that. It's crazy. But anyway,
wow.
So I've been reading up on those, and you can see the minutes of just how just like on the ground, how the Reformation was done. And sure enough, what you basically see is bishops saying, hey, let's do this. And then a bunch of bishops saying, yep, agreed. And they all signed off on it. And then Elizabeth or some other monarch rubber stamped on it. Now, obviously, the king or queen wasn't totally passive, but fundamentally, it was the bishops coming around and saying, hey, we want to do this. And so we do it. Even to the point where Elizabeth, she actually opposed the inclusion of Article 28, which is on how the unfaithful do not actually receive the body and blood of Christ when they partake in the Eucharist. She actually didn't want to include that between the ratification of the first ratification of the 39 Articles in 1563 before their second ratification in 1571. So between then, she was actually opposed to the inclusion of that article, but the majority of the bishops or clergy were like, no, we want to keep that. So she actually succumbed to pressure, and she kept Article 28 in, and so we have it to this day. And so what this is that there is a natural, inevitable power struggle between the church and the state. That's inevitable. And the ultimate solution to that really is just like, look, you're never going to have a totally self-contained system of accountability. Eventually, every system breaks down and can be exploited by bad guys, in which case a new revival is required. So it's best in our system just to say, look, bishops, you just do right doctrine and do good discipline. That's what you need to do. And then kings, make sure you're well learned in the faith, so that you can see if the bishops are mucking up, just fix it up. And there's really no more point to say otherwise, because in the end, a bad king will do bad things, and you can't exactly just teach something else and they suddenly won't. So we just kind of accept that and just say, look, good bishops, good kings, just do the good you can.
Yeah, no, that's certainly true. And if you take a look at certain countries, if they have a devout Christian like head of state, not a guy who flaunts it, but a guy who actually like practices his faith and lives it out, that does wonders for the people there. Like in Poland, you had the president whose kid became a Latin Mass priest. And then you have in Italy, and in Poland, the faith is doing a lot better than Italy. Of course, in Italy, you have that guy who holds up a rosary. I can't remember that guy's name. What's that guy who held up a rosary? He's a a couple heads of state ago, but like he's trying to appeal to the religious people in Italy, and like I'm wondering, has he ever prayed that rosary? Because this guy's like he's like on his third marriage or something.
Oh, what's his name? Was it Berlusconi? Is that his name?
No, it was. Hold on, I'm going to search this up. Last prime, is it prime minister or president?
It's prime minister in Italy.
List of prime ministers in Italy. Okay, now it's Giorgia Meloni. Oh man. All right. Up to the top. I don't even know who. Okay, Prime Minister of Italy holds rosary. Salvini. Okay, he was a deputy prime minister, and he holds up a rosary. Yeah, but like there's no evidence that guy practices his faith, right?
Right.
There's like it's a lot easier to hold up a rosary than to raise a kid whose son is a Latin mass priest. I mean, that's it's really hard to raise a kid like that, right? Compared to just holding up a rosary. I could hold up my rosary; it's over there. But but I don't know what James White's desire is, because you pointed out that the state promotes ideology. It's promoting ideology. It promotes LGBT.
Yeah.
It promotes the Holocaust. Boy, this is going to get shadow banned. But no, like it promotes.
What do you mean by promotes the Holocaust?
Like shoves it down our throat. In the country I'm in, it's illegal to deny the Holocaust.
Oh, there you go. Far out.
And I don't know about Australia, but
it's not for us. So we have our vocal guys, but unfortunately, given some flare-ups, including one very, very likely false flag incident, our state government in particular, federal government, but also our state government, has sought to pass new legislation to protect the Jews from hostile opinions. That's basically what it is. It's very explicit.
Yeah, and like the what you have is you have a they're promoting stuff like you will go to jail up to 2 years in my country if you publicly deny the Holocaust. By the way, I don't deny the Holocaust.
For legal reasons.
So I mean that, like, if I say Jesus, I publicly say Jesus Christ is, and I say a bad word, that's fully protected by the law. I can say that, I couldn't say that, 300 or 400 years ago in a Western country, but you can say that now. But you can't deny the Holocaust because, that's the new religion. So the government promotes ideology. But it seems like James White, it seems like for James White, it could be any ideology on planet Earth except the Christian faith.
Yeah.
Because God forbid, it might be taught by some people who are hypocrites, which happens in churches too. So I don't know why that's the big deal. Or they might teach some doctrine he doesn't agree with, like Anglicanism, Romanism, or Easternism, or whatever. Yeah, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, it's radically inconsistent with what he's said before, because he is of, in terms of theological camps, one of his denominators is theonomy. For those who don't know, especially in the Roman world, theonomy is a theological school of thought that emphasizes the law of Moses as very much normative for the governing of civil society, not necessarily in a one-to-one way. There are some if fringe guys, I don't know, say fringe, like fringe, concern. I hate those words, but there are some edge cases of theonomists who will basically say one-for-one application, but most of them will say no, not one-for-one application, but normative in terms of setting the precedent for civil policy, which framed that way, that just seems to be like just all Christian rulers in history did that, but whatever. But one particular thing they emphasize is responding to the idea of like secular liberal democracy, where it's like, oh, it's neutral, free speech. Their key thing, and they're fundamentally right on this, I used to call myself a theonomist for this reason, is that there is no such thing as religious neutrality in the state. There is no state that is religiously neutral. It always enforces a religion. And in our age, it's the religion of the GAE, the gay, the global American empire. It's promotion of all those things. It's the Holocaust religion, as you say it as well. Basically all these things, which,
or the acronym community, as I call them.
Yeah, the soup community. Yeah, I was about to say a pretty dark joke, so I won't go there. But anyway, I'll tell you in the private chat soon. But so all those things, they're religiously enforced in our society. That's a fact. There are blasphemy laws and what have you. So they pointed that out, and so they said, therefore, since the state is always religious, since the state always has a God, that God has to be the God of the Bible, and it has to be the law that God gave us. So they've promoted basically what people would call theocracy, not in the sense of like a prophet or a bishop ruling. I mean, most of these guys tend to be like Reformed Baptists anyway, so definitely not. But but they do promote a state that explicitly recognizes Christ as Lord and promotes the law of God in the land. So, in other words, he is for, in the generic sense of the word, he is for a theocratic rule. But then when you actually just come to the question of, okay, so therefore, given that this was integral to the law of Moses, this would include the suppression of false religion, right? And then but then once you do that, and you ask that to Dr. White, because he's done all those talking points before. He's done all the there's no religious neutrality. The state always has a God, yada, yada, yada. All true stuff. But then when you ask him, okay, so therefore, the state should suppress false religion and perversions of the true religion, right?
Or at least put some restrictions on it.
Yeah, you'd think so. But then as soon as you say something like that, he's like, sacralism. What if bad ruler come in and
Fritz
Erb was trapped under the tower, and they preached to him to baptize his infants until he was given a mercy killing. Fritz Erb, therefore state bad. It's oh man. It gets so tiresome. It's a blatant inconsistency when you actually just follow what entails from his own theonomic worldview. And he loves the theonomists and presuppositionalists in particular, which White is as well. They love to talk about, worldview, your worldview presuppositions, your Weltanschauung in German. They love to talk about all that. But then and they'll say, therefore you've got to apply worldview consistently. So, okay, let's do that. You want theonomy, that's going to include the suppression of false religion by the state. That is a fact. You can't avoid that. But as soon as you say that, he's like, sacralism.
Well,
so
like for example, about how many mosques, I'm asking you this, how many mosques are in France?
It's certainly growing.
Okay, it's about between 2,000 and 3,000. How many mosques are in Germany?
Probably more.
About the same amount, about 3,000, right? A lot of mosques, because there's a lot of Muslims there. There's a lot of Muslims in Italy. Guess how many mosques are in Italy?
1.
There are 8 mosques in the entire country, like 1 per major city.
Because I knew that was only allowed very recently, relatively speaking.
Yeah, like they're very like there's heavy restrict. Like, okay, it's a post-Christian society, Italy. It's very secular there. It's historically Christian, and the vast majority of people there are still baptized, but I think only 8% or something go to church, right? It's kind of like England with Anglicanism. But there are laws on the books there that put restrictions on minority religious communities. Same with pretty much every country in Eastern Europe. Like if people want, type into Google, like the Muslims in Slovakia have been trying to get a mosque for years, but they just keep changing the rules to make it It's like, okay, you need 10,000 signatures. Oh, now you need 20,000. You know, they just. I mean, Slovakia, historic Christian country, and they don't want mosques there. I'm sorry, if you're a Muslim, just go to like France or Germany, where, well, the Muslims don't like France for other reasons, but no, the fact that like a Christian can't go to Saudi Arabia and start building churches and handing out tracts and stuff, right? No, because they are very strict, and it's not just Saudi Arabia too. It's like Afghanistan. It's now there are some Islamic countries that are more lax where you could probably do a tiny bit of that, but I mean, it's the same thing. They're protecting their dominant culture, and in those cultures, they know that not everyone's observant. They know that in Egypt and Algeria and Morocco, not everyone is fully practicing their Islamic faith, right? You have a lot of secularists there, but they know that not everyone's going to what's going on?
Okay, I'm back. Happened? Sorry. Get rid of the other one. My browser just randomly shut and restarted like out of nowhere. Nothing.
Okay.
I was saying some naughty words, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, I'm like, I see a second Paul down there. There's you, and then there's a guy waving. I'm like, yeah.
Okay. I come in and I say, "Hey, Rule, sorry I'm late to the stream." It's like, wait, who was I with?
Sacralism is just Christian orthodoxy prior to the 18th century. Nobody cares about the Anabaptists except Jamila.
Wait.
Yeah, we know
that. Dr. White, for this latest stream that he's live on right now, he has his live chat open. Do you want to have some fun?
Oh, are we gonna like follow his? All right, bring it up.
He's got a live chat going. So let me do this again, because for some reason when I just made an extra tab, that's just what nuked the whole thing. So
okay.
So if I suddenly disappear again, that's why. So
okay.
Okay, all good. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so far so good. Great, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
It's not the source of Erhan's quote, is it? Oh, remember that.
All right, here it is.
Oh, there's Jamila.
This is them.
Can you hear it?
Doubling down on the video from a couple months ago with all the errors.
Right, what should
I'll
turn it down a bit.
Hagia Sophia.
I want to say something fun in the live chat. What should I say?
Whoops, we didn't do our homework stuff. I didn't see any in the.
I'm thinking the Crusaders indulgence
before, but
across
anyway,
the whole Holy Land sacralistically. What do you think?
Do it.
Get through the reading list that I've assigned.
Done.
And of course that can be interesting.
He never had live chat open until he's only started doing that recently. I think he's always had it.
Got about
I don't know
3,500, 4,000 pages on my reading list right now.
What's he talking about right now?
Doing a deep dive, not only into again the whole period around Second Nicaea, so the area and Frankfurt.
I think he was just talking about
before
the
and after
stuff.
Second Ecumenical Council, Seventh Ecumenical.
I wonder
Council.
if he mentioned the.
Okay, why is he 2 years late on the Nicaea 2 stuff?
Deep dive into the period of the Arian resurgence after the Council of Nicaea.
Okay.
99% of the church history discussions, even when someone just does do, which I'm thankful they do it, but still. About all you could ever hope for in the vast majority of evangelical churches would be someone to maybe actually on a Wednesday night for the few hardcore believers do a quick run through it. Well, what are called the 7 ecumenical councils and what were they talking about and stuff like that. And when you do that, you don't get into what really happened. And as a result, a lot of people have a very surface level understanding. So like if you were to ask somebody,
in all fairness, has James White actually gone and wait?
Oh yeah, he's pulling out the books.
At the time, had any idea what in the world that would have meant?
So I've got my Constantinople 553 right here.
Nice.
Has James White, has he actually gone through, like, purchased all the price volumes for and gone through all the councils? I doubt that he has.
I know he has purchased the Nicaea 2 one, but that was relatively recently. I want to say either start of this year or late last year. And this was like 1 or 2 years after the rest of us had been talking about and debating that very text.
I know, he was 2 years late. He's like, Christ as it's...
That doesn't mean that there weren't...
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea, Stacey. I'm going to say something like that. Let's try
all-out Roman persecution tends to...
Ignatius,
you're so busy running from Roman soldiers that you can't really do much debating online.
In the chat.
Most recent heresy. And so there was the Council of Antioch, Paul of Samosata. The Eastern churches had dealt with modalism.
Does he know how that? I love it.
There's all sorts of different.
Does he know how Paul of Samosata was finally kicked out? Does he know that? Do you know that, Alan?
All sorts of stuff like that. But
you mentioned it in your video
today as Jesus.
They used the pagan Roman authorities.
Though the specific.
I meant to come in. He wasn't leaving the building.
International formulation didn't exist in that exact form back then, but a similar denial of the Trinity by denying the distinction of the divine persons. That had been a problem in the East for a long time. And there had been a council in Antioch.
On 324. Very few people actually know about that one.
And had resulted in an interesting situation where there wasn't any persecution going on at that time in Antioch, and so there was actually an appeal to civil sources because Paul and his followers refused to leave the church. It didn't end up actually solving much of anything, but some people say, see, there's the beginning. Again, only a few years later, you've got the massive persecution going on where none of that becomes relevant, and those buildings were taken over or burned or torn down or whatever else.
Okay, and Jim Jones was a pastor who caused 900 people to kill themselves. Therefore, pastor's bad, guys. Pastor's bad.
Yeah, and there was no sacralism there.
Me personally, have had some central role in the formulation and definition of the term sacralism. That's just absurd.
Who cares what you
think? Just like,
Jimmy?
what?
Yeah, he's right. There was like one other guy or something who was using it in his sense. Like you can do not one other guy, but if you do a Google Ngram search, that term only takes off like in the 60s. Really.
Really?
Look, the vast majority of people would say that utilization of sacralism, that term where you have an inappropriate, unbiblical mixture.
Unbiblical, according to who?
Crossing over the boundaries of authority between church and state.
So is this just begging the question then, I guess? Sacralism is just bad and it's
really
unbiblical by
popularized by
definition?
Leonard Verdine.
Obviously, we wouldn't accept that.
Another book called Anatomy of a Hybrid.
I will say, our use of sacralism we're deliberately taking the term from him and like reappropriating it. So obviously, he's always had a negative connotation for it, but just by way of like rhetorical strategy, we've kind of taken it and started repurposing it.
Old tack. And so the idea that I've had something to do with defining this term or anything else, when I first started talking with Doug Wilson,
is he alluding to me maybe?
Because
I talk about his.
I'm just using a term that
I think he is.
I started teaching church history at Grand Canyon University in 19.
Oh, here we go.
Or you were even born, kiddo.
90?
When he was debating Jerry Matetics.
Yeah, we debated Jerry Matetics at the time.
And so I've been using this phraseology for
Dr. White, is Jerry
decades.
Matitix in the room right now?
And so, no, I did not in any way, shape, or form have anything to do with formulating it, defining it, or anything else at all. But here is a section. They got a guest on, the other Paul from Australia, and I just want to play a section here and make some comments, and then we'll.
All right, boys, here we go.
We'll wrap up because I have gone too long in the response to other people. So let's listen to this section.
With his paganism and further legislating.
Okay, sorry. He's talking about Julian the Apostate.
Senpai has noticed me.
So after Nicaea, after Constantius, and that time period, for a brief period, you have the rule of an emperor by the name of Julian the Apostate. Okay, because he wanted to go back to paganism, basically. That's why he's called the.
Alan, look what I'm putting in the chat.
But that's the conversation here. But that's not central, but gives you the context.
In his favor. Why? Because he gained power. And when he had power, he knew, hey, I can just do things. You can just do things. I can restore pagan worship. And he did try. But also, the second point, I hope you guys noticed this. On the second point, he deliberately stopped involving the state in the church's affairs, except to suppress them, which he did a few things, but he wasn't very hard. He actually knew from experience that didn't work. And the explicit goal of that, the explicit goal of withholding state support from the church was to ensure that the bishops would keep fighting each other. They wouldn't come over their differences, and this would therefore weaken the church. That is a massive testimony. That is a huge admission there. And again, this is at least according to Marcellinus. I keep thinking that maybe I read Julian himself explicitly say this in one of his letters, but I'm not totally sure. But either way, Marcellinus, he's in a very good position to know these things, so I don't see any reason not to accept his testimony. But that's really, really important. Julian was very tactical. He was very shrewd in his governance and in his response to Christianity. And so that it is certainly a thing of divine providence that he only reigned a few short years, and none of his successors carried on the project, because what he was doing would have been something that could have easily undone the church and relegated it back to a minor cult in the empire.
Catch that? Let me explain. The theory being put forward here is that Constantine's intervention, beginning in 324, there's some argument, 323, 324. Even scholars argue about the exact chronology.
But what does Shaft say?
Leading up to the Council of Nicaea in 325, that Constantine's intervention saved the church. Now, the church has survived Roman persecution starting in AD 64. It has survived the attacks of Gnosticism, and then the most insidious attack of Valentinian Gnosticism, which was a demonic
He's really strong
effort to make Gnosticism look as much like Christianity as possible.
I'd like to ask him where the Church of North Africa is today.
The state did nothing about that. The state did not help.
Yeah, strong.
The state did not help, especially in the East, dealing with dynamic monarchianism, modalism, etc., etc. The church has been going for,
I said strong man in the chat, boys,
300 years without the state. Well, 250 years up till Nicaea, without the state stepping in to fix things. And then Constantine steps in and, this isn't this great. Well, here's the problem. Constantine, the only way that this would be overly relevant is if Constantine is the one who suggested the terminology to solve the problem. Homoousios versus homoousios or heterousios.
No, what? And
there really isn't any evidence of that. But if there is, it's extremely problematic for many reasons. You mean the church lacked the ability via
first
the
of
Spirit?
all, completely irrelevant. But second of all, Eusebius of Caesarea, his letter to Caesarea after the council explicitly attests
who doesn't get
that
baptized
Constantine
before he dies,
suggested
and then by
homoousios be put in the creed.
Arian bishop
What?
to come up with this terminology? The church couldn't do this? You really think the church would just
that's not the point.
blown apart if Constantine had not done what Constantine did?
Jamila!
And the problem is, once Constantine did this, what was the result?
Quid.
Well, as I noted, Constantine does not remain firm on this issue.
No.
And is baptized by minimally a semi-Arian bishop.
No.
His Constantius, his offspring, are much worse. And so in, what was it, 358, 359, you have twin councils, one in the east, one in the west. You got Seleucia in the east, you got Ariminum in the west.
They're actually slightly before that.
The emperor calls them,
360 is the Council of
and
Constantinople.
he runs them
before the one we know about.
He has a specific outcome that he wants to see.
And how many people follow that council, Jimmy?
And
who follows
when
the Ariminum here? Hands up.
Bishops who are still faithful to the Nicene understanding of the full deity of Christ.
And it's a fair number of people
refuse to cooperate,
but they only
he won't let them leave. He basically imprisons them. Not, doesn't throw them in a jail cell, but they can't leave. He just leaves them there. You can't leave until you give me the decision that I want. Now, Seleucia was more of a mess than Ariminum was, but he did the same thing in both. And so this is sacralism. You have a Christian prince, Constantius. This must be a good thing because the church needs it. And what's the Christian prince doing? He's promoting a denial of the deity of Christ. This is what the government's doing. They've kicked Athanasius out. They keep condemning Athanasius. Government, money, bribery, threats of banishment, imprisonment are being used to determine the theological teachings of the Christian church. That is sacralism. That's what it is.
That's
sure, this is in the early period.
Clip there. I want to clip that.
That's what it is. And when Arianism was finally overthrown, was it overthrown by power of the government?
In large part, yes.
Boy, tell that to Athanasius.
Yes.
Athanasius, you know, your works against the Arians. Yeah, thanks for all that, but
who said
waste
otherwise?
of time. All that biblical argumentation, faithfulness over time. Come on, guys. You just need, it's a new day.
Who said just need? No one said that.
How did we get the border closed? We just needed a new president.
You know the 4th century better than I do, but as soon as Athanasius dies in 373,
the same thing.
There's a guy named
Peter, escape this, can you?
Who's Catholic Orthodox in his.
You're stuck with it.
But then I think they had
the providence of God.
They had an Arian after that, right?
I haven't looked
what you just heard
super specifically into the who's who
about
of that.
Julian.
Okay.
But
Julian,
there are those concerns with Antioch especially, and that's a big cause of the Meletian or Flavian schism.
Only that number of decades. Yeah.
Many different places. Many different places have that.
Get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, Arianism's still a threat for a long time until it's basically cut down.
But did you hear what was said? This was really dangerous because without government intervention, the bishops will be all over each other. How did they survive up to Nicaea? I mean, the pressures on the church under Roman persecution were immense.
Okay, Dr. White, we have empirical verification of this today in a world where the state doesn't regulate the church. Division after division after division. That's just a fact. What, good or bad, put that to the side. That's just a fact. That's what happens when the state doesn't force everyone to the table to come to a consensus.
And keep in mind, at like 370s,
who call themselves Christians, who
you go 370s, there's way more Christians than there were in, say, the 270s.
This is going to become the place.
Way more.
Yep.
All the way through the time of the Reformation and even beyond. And when I hear somebody say, "Oh, what if Julian had lived longer, Christianity would have returned to being a minor cult in the empire."
Yes. What happened to the Eastern churches after Islam, Dr. White? Wait, what did he say?
It was a minor cult when the apostles were on the earth. What is the
what does that even mean?
Measure in the New Testament of what the church is supposed to be?
Does
it have something to do with empire power?
Yes, actually.
Emperors,
kings, will bow before
presidents.
Yes. Rule the nations with a rod of iron.
Yes.
What do we read in Ephesians? What do we read in Paul all the time? What's God's measurement of the church? That he might present to himself a bride spotless and pure, without any wrinkle. A body filled with driftwood and false professors is not holy and blameless in the sight of God.
You mean like in a non-sacred church as well, which always happens?
Of what it means for the church to be healthy and glorifying of God. Wrong definition.
Yeah, well,
and what's amazing is these guys have actually gotten to the point. I don't know. No, the other Paul's an Anglican, so leave him out. The other guys, they claim to be Baptists.
This is a good point. This is a good point.
They cannot possibly remain Baptists.
I mean,
they have to repudiate
I agree.
Everything that their forefathers ever wrote.
I agree.
Hey,
have they read anything from those who came before them? Because I don't get any feeling that they do.
Baptists back in the Anglican. That they have. Let's go.
I agree. The Baptists should stop being Baptists.
But the definition of what makes the church, totally missing. They're not getting it. Holy, blameless before him.
Who says otherwise?
That's one of the things that set Baptists apart.
Here's really linear thinking on this.
Is that they opposed that Constantinianism, that sacralism. They sought a pure church. That's why they were persecuted.
Sounds like the Donatists to me.
And believe you me, with the attitudes I see these days, if quote unquote Christian nationalism happened today, yeah. Oh, we know what would happen. Give power to these folks, and
unironically, make me king. I'll do everything right.
That's why I say, blessed is the nation whose God is Yahweh, but that means not nominally. Not just in name, but in reality.
No.
Stephen Wolfe can call it revivalism all he wants. It's just simply the fulfillment of scriptural promises, the work of the Spirit of God. That's all it is. That's all it is. Well, I wanted to just briefly mention that. There's so much more. I think there really is a need, and we'll see. I don't know. But I really think there is a need to do some church history deep dives into that period from Nicaea to Constantinople.
How about a debate, Dr. White?
In the 4th century, and then the time period around the middle of the 8th century as well, before and after Nicaea too. I think there's a lot to be learned there. We can bring it up to the modern period, persecution, sacralism, foundation of it all. I think it's important, and it's not a part. Well, let's put it this way: the people trying to address it, just guys, you haven't done your homework. You haven't done your homework.
What?
Anyway, all right. We went a little long, but like there you go.
Anyone else? And believe me, his homework's not with reading these frauds like Shaft and all these idiots. He's actually plowing through the primary sources. He's not reading these.
Are you talking about me?
Calhoun. Yeah, because you read primary sources like you, me, Trulia, this guy named this guy I had on my channel called Spoken Through Leo. He's a young guy. He's just getting started. He's primary source. I've convinced him on that. But it seems everyone else is you've got Ubi Petrus. He's okay. He's like half and half, which is not as much as he would like, but that's legions more than a lot of people.
Yeah, he's more than others, but he's still a bit of a Muscola's bro kind of thing as well.
Scholars.
Yeah.
Oh my, that was just painful to listen to. And what I'm going to do, Paul, I'm going to clip the spot where we have Jamila, and I'm going to put that as a separate video. You're 100% allowed to do the same thing on your channel.
Too easy. Well, I might just let you do that, because I think I'll make my own dedicated response to it in a stream. I'll look at what he says, prepare some notes in that. I'll probably make it like my next Theocrat Lounge stream on Rumble.
But Paul, you haven't done your homework. You haven't read Shaft. Oh,
Shaft. Oh my word. I haven't read Nick Needham. I haven't read Charles Spurgeon's. Oh, I don't know if you know about this, but Charles Spurgeon, his brilliant work called The True Apostolical Succession. Actually, I won't even paraphrase it for you. I'll just read it for you right now. The True Apostolical Succession, Spurgeon. All right. So obviously, you know who Spurgeon is. He's like the big daddy of the Baptist. Yeah, he's like the guy. And they like to point to him, like, again, he's like the Prince of Preachers and all that. But also like Baptist, but also like very orthodox, very thorough, blah 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 blah. And the same Baptists will try to say at the same time, like, oh, we're in unity with the early church in terms of doctrine and all that. We oppose the bad heresies and schismatics and blah blah blah. Here's what he said in his little essay called The True Apostolical Succession. Or it might have been a sermon, I don't know, but I just know that it exists. He says the following. They stood alone. And now it seems to me at this day, when any say to us, you as a denomination, what great names can you mention? What fathers can you speak of? We may reply, more than any under heaven, for we are the old apostolic church that has never bowed to the yoke of princes yet. So far, so good. Very pious. But now, we, known among men in all ages by various names, such as Donatus, Novatians, Paulicians, Petrobrusians, Cathari, Arnoldus, Hussites, Waldenses, Lollards, and Anabaptists, have always contended for the purity of the church and her distinctness and separation from human government.
Oh, Spurgeon. I love that guy already. Oh, man.
Beautiful. Absolutely
what
beautiful.
An idiot. Oh.
That is the succession of all time.
Yeah, it's like, oh, yeah, the Donatists and the... You notice how they don't ever say the Arians. You notice they don't ever say that.
No, of course not. No.
They think the Trinity is the one thing the Sacralists were right about. Spurgeon was a great preacher and a horrible historian theologian. Well, I don't know. Something tells me if I was alive in his time, I wouldn't go to hear him preach just based on what I just heard.
I mean, you can distinguish between preaching ability and content.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
He was against
How good
Christmas
was that?
too. He was against Christmas too. Well, Spurgeon, if you hear me, Merry Christmas. Even though it's almost June. Oh, by the way, guys. In Canada and the States, I know you're one day ahead, Paul. It's the 572nd anniversary of the fall of Constantinople to the Turkish Sultan. May Constantine the 11th rest in peace. Saint Constantine the 11th, as I call him. Yeah, no, that was a dark day in Christian history.
And it was.
Yeah, but oh man. Well,
we managed to catch that live. We just so happened to.
That was amazing. and how bad it was too. The guy keeps getting worse.
Dr. White, respectfully, if you're seeing this, like, obviously I still want to be friendly with you, but I just have to be honest. That was a bad response. That was like, just to speak your language, to get on your level. You didn't think in good categories. You didn't do the reading. Like, you've done some reading, you've done a bunch, but not the right reading, and you definitely have not interpreted it right. That's for sure. Oh man.
That's painful to listen to, man. It's like nails on a chalkboard there.
Still, it's a milestone for me. It's a milestone for me. I've gotten called out on the dividing line now. I can put that on my resume.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've been called out on the dividing line.
Oh, you've been called out heaps. Yeah.
Yeah, and my Protestant cousin, he listened to it and complained how nasty James White was to me and all this stuff. Jamila. That's before I even knew the name Jamila. But
what's another one that they like to call him? Imam White or something like that?
Jamila Muhammad White. Or Jimmy Muhammad. It started with Jimmy Muhammad White. Then it's like Jamila Muhammad White. You know something? I found out about that because that clip I sent you of Javier Perdomo, it was about, he was reviewing a response by William Albrecht and Sam Shamoun to James White talking about St. Jerome. And then I didn't see that one initially. But then I went with a friend of mine named John, and we did a response to that one. And then he commented on it. He said a few things, and he's like, "Well, thanks for being so kind." Sam Shamoun and William Albrecht did a response to it, and it was anything but, you know. And I'm like, I gotta check this out. So then I literally watched the first 30 seconds of their response, and I'm like, okay, I know what he means. It's like, I've got a new nickname for him, Jamila Muhammad White. Oh, this is too good. So it is okay. I'm curious, Stacy Long, is she one of your viewers or my viewers?
I'm not sure. I thought she was one of yours.
Oh, all right. Well, I don't recall if I've seen you, Stacy, but welcome to my channel. And welcome everyone here. God bless you guys. Oh, wow, I made the live. Yeah. Yeah, no, my next are you working on some stuff right now, Paul?
I am, yes. I am working on my long-awaited what is Anglicanism video, and actually I've decided to split that up into possibly 2 or 3 videos because there's actually a lot of detail to get into. Other than that, I'm basically in the script writing stage for that because the research is just about done. But I have also recorded my response to Bertuzzi, but now it's just in the editing stage. I'm hoping to have that done today and uploaded. My time, that is, because it's 9:30 in the morning. So I'm hoping to have that done by this evening and then put that up. And then I'm hoping, like, because I was supposed to have the What is Anglicanism video out a fair little while ago. But just, it's a very, like, I'm actually trying to give a comprehensive, decisive answer to the question. So out of due diligence, I've taken a lot more time to read and research than that. But just to make sure I keep up the content streak, I've basically filled up that space with a few other videos since. And so the Bertuzzi video will be another example of that. Other than that, working on a couple of books right now. One of them is almost done. That one's called On the Right to Dissent. Basically, how to discern what things Christians are allowed to disagree with. So basically Dr. Ortland's theological triage, or his book Finding the Right Hill to Die On, basically that, but a lot more detail, way more. Not to like throw poo on him or anything. Like, his book's great for what it is. It's meant to be very accessible to the layman. Mine one's meant to be very, very scholastic in contrast. So yeah, it's kind of going to be like that, but it's also going to be a lot more spicy given the subjects it deals with. So yeah, there's that one, and then there's another one I just recently conceived, and it shouldn't be long at all because it'll be actually quite brief, and it's mostly just citing other material, a pocket guide to Anglicanism. So that's going to be awesome.
Okay, and have you secured a publisher?
For the first book, I have, yes. It's a friend helps run a publishing house, Sacra Press. So that's going to be where On the Right to Dissent
Sacra,
is. But
as in sacralism. Oh,
that's where that'll be where that first book is. But the book, A Pocket Guide to Anglicanism, that's probably going to be my first book for my own like independent thing. I want to call it Catholic Reformation Press. So that'll be that.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, because I'm trying to. So, like, to get a publisher, do you have to like find an agent?
I mean, ordinarily with like big publishers, yes. But if you find smaller ones, you could just like ask whoever, and if they're reachable, just ask the guy who runs it, like, "Hey, would you like this book?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, sure. Let's start up a contract. Done. Easy."
Yeah, because I am writing a book right now, and I'm wondering, like I'll self-publish if I have to, like on Amazon, but I wonder if I should, I'm wondering how to go about securing a publisher. Like I'd like a Catholic publisher, a small Catholic publisher, even. I'll tell you, it's about the Fourth Crusade. So
Nice.
There you go. I'm going. I'm re-going through all my primary sources on that.
That's awesome.
And yeah, because that's the one thing I know. I've written a 5,000 word article on it for 1 Peter 5, but I think I can. I think I can expand that to a full length book, because there's just like that's an episode where no one knows what happened. Like it's like, oh, the Crusaders are so bloodthirsty. They just didn't kill a bunch of Muslims and Jews. They sacked a Christian city as well. Actually, they sacked more than one Christian city, but no one's ever heard of that other city. They only hear about Constantinople. But yeah, so that's my one thing. There are, I think, a couple books about the Fourth Crusade, but they're both academic. So yeah, and I've really gone through the effort to get like I just binge the primary sources, right? That's what you do. And I don't know. I think the primary sources tell a pretty good story on that, and I want to share my yeah.
Maybe I'm sure you know them. What are they called? Emmaus Road Publishing or something like that?
Oh, that's Scott Hahn's outfit.
Yep.
That might be a little harder to get. But we'll see. I'll talk to Eric Ibarra, because he's published with them.
That's right. Yeah.
Like his papacy book is with them, or his first papacy book. He just came out with another one, a smaller one. I don't know if that's with Emmaus either, but yeah. So I know he's published with Emmaus. I know Timothy Flanders has a couple books published with Emmaus. They're going to come out in 2026. They're, I think, responses to Eastern Orthodoxy, because he is he's formerly Eastern Orthodox. What's Alan's opinion on the JQ? Well, I'm more or less, I'll tell you my opinion. I'm more or less on board with E. Michael Jones. I agree probably with about 95% of his thesis. I think his approach is too confrontational. Apparently he has made converts, so God bless him for that. But I don't know. We need to find a way. See, the problem that I get when I try to convert Jews is they like to play on the 2,000 years of anti-Semitism thing, and that's a like, I'm not going to grant them that. And then I say that's a bunch of baloney. That's not true. And they're like, what about when Christians killed Jews because they blamed them for the Black Plague? I'm like, some Christians did that, but Pope Clement VI wrote papal bulls telling them not to do that. Are you going to take that into account? Oh, you're an anti-Semite block. Like, that's what happened.
Ask him. Ask them, hey guys, what's the tradition behind the Wailing Wall? Oh, it's because we were kicked out of Judea by Emperor Hadrian. Okay, why were you kicked out?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they started the war.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were essentially allowed to keep their faith, keep the temple sacrifices going. They could have a king, but he was kind of like a vassal, not quite a vassal, but you know what I mean. Yeah, and yeah, that's, I don't know. Yeah, no, that's a that's a good thing. I'll bring up it's like, yeah, how did that happen? Yeah, the famous 109 bar. Yeah, no, like if I take a kid and the kid goes, hi, this is a kid Tom. He's been expelled from 109 different schools. Are you going to say, oh, poor Tom, or those poor schools? I think we know.
It's
okay.
Such an elegant analogy.
Okay, it's for me, but we both can answer this question, Alan. Which ecclesiastical history is your favorite? I've only read Eusebius. Should I read? So, Paul, I will allow you to answer this first, and then I will answer it after. And guys, questions for the other Paul, because we're winding down here. It's not every day I get to have this legend on my channel. So ask the questions right now.
Thank you, Paul. King. It's also not every day I get to be on the channel of another legend as well. That's awesome to hear. I haven't comprehensively read through any of them, but I've read through like massive portions of most of them. I mean, I'd say it's a vanilla answer, but I'd say Eusebius is my favorite just because he's like the pioneer of the whole thing, so he's very special that way. But also because he is more than basically any other ancient historian I've ever read or know of. He quotes his sources ridiculously. Like he quotes them so much. That's just a huge portion of his text. That's what makes him so valuable. So that's why I love him a lot.
So who should he read? He read after Eusebius?
I mean, Sosman, Theodoret, Socrates, Scholasticus. They're basically around the same periods, largely, and they'll cover the same events. Although there'll be some differences between them. Just either of those will work fine. Yeah, but there is also the lesser known fragments of Philostorgius. So same time, he was an Arian actually, but he wrote his own church history. Pretty much almost the entire thing has been lost, but there was an epitome, which is like chapter summaries of the work preserved in the Myriabiblion by Photius of Constantinople. Was that him? I think so. And he basically preserved chapter summaries, but then there's also a ton of other fragments of either small direct quotes or summaries of his history in different chapters in that. And that's been composed into that exact volume that Alan has there. I have the same one. So it's basically all the fragments we know of composed into one thing. And of course, there's a lot of commentary. Yeah. There's obviously a lot of commentary on like how we discern what's good, what's not, what's authentic, what's not. But otherwise, you get a big picture of what he of like his perspective on the church history, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, and I would say like who to read after Eusebius. Of Sozomen, Socrates, and Theodoret, one of those. I mean, if you want to be a big nerd, I've read all three. Paul's read all three, and a couple others too. There's Rufinus and a few others I got there. But like, if you read Sozomen there, like you pointed out, that's more than enough. And then after that, I guess it just depends what you want to study. You could study what's a guy? He talks about the French, Gregory of Tours. If you want to learn about England, you can read Saint Bede the Venerable. If you want to study the Byzantine Empire, you could read Evagrius. He kind of goes from about he takes off where Sozeman stops, and he goes to just before 600, about 590. Yeah, so I guess it depends what you want to study, but right after Eusebius, yeah, I'd say Sozeman's a good pick. All right, see you later. All right, later.
Thank you.
Oh boy, here we go. Here we go.
Sheep stealers. Next.
All right. If your family comes from England, you should read Bede.
I still need to read Bede. I still need to. I've got him here.
You haven't? Oh, it's so.
No, I haven't. No.
I have a question for Paul. I'm on the CC in New South Wales, so between Newey and Sydney Anglican. I'm Catholic, but watching from your outside. How y'all in Sydney plan on making your denomination Orthodox? Interesting question.
I'm on the. So I'm so sorry. I've got to. So I'm on the CC in. Oh, Central Coast. Central Coast. Yes. Okay. I'm Catholic, but watching you from your outside. How do y'all in Sydney Anglican plan on making your denom Orthodox? I mean, basically, just what we see in history. Just get the right men into positions of influence and power, and or persuading those already in those positions to what we want, and things will happen. And things are happening. I'm actually in the know. Things are happening, if slowly, but that's how change often happens. So, yeah, it is about networking and making friends in high places fundamentally.
Yeah, and I think now in 2025 we live in a day, certainly Canada and Australia.
We do live in a day, yes,
where religion is 100% optional. Now, it's been optional for a couple hundred years, but the difference between optional now and 200 years ago, 200 years ago, it's optional, but you're kind of an outsider if you don't go to church. Now, if you go to church now, there's a social penalty attached to that. You hate gay people, you hate science, you're backward, and so only the people who truly care are attend church, let alone go into a seminary. I think you plan on being a priest, right, Paul?
I do. I hope so. If God has that open for me.
Okay, yeah. So it's Paul or people like Paul who believe everything and don't water it down. Like in Charlotte, like you saw what their bishop did. That's not the future. That's not the future. Okay. James White picking through church history baptistically. Taking a page out of Spurgeon's book. Okay. I guess we're winding down. We still got 19 viewers. Do you want to wrap things up now?
Keen as a beam, yeah. Alan, thank you heaps for having me on, man. It's always a fun time having you on the stream. Very, very fun commenting on how sacralism is based and managing to catch Dr. White's live response. That was Jamila. Sick and very funny because it was a very lackluster response. But people can definitely expect something more, something fuller from me. I'm tossing up between whether I'll respond on another stream of my own or if I will make it like a blog response. I could do either, but I'll probably lean towards a stream because that'll be a lot more fun. But I'm genuinely hoping I'm putting this out there. So if Dr. White sees this, if anything, I want him to see this. But I'm doing this. I'm provoking in a good way the conversation on this out of hope that he would accept a debate from me because he's already declined before. But now that I'm getting louder and louder with this stuff, I'm kind of he may think of it as like preaching the gospel of sacralism or something. I don't know. But I'm getting deliberately very louder. I'm spreading this information far and wide. And I'm responding.
And he can't ignore you anymore. He
can't. No, he can't.
Like 2 episodes in a row, he's played your stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. That's and that was my intention. Well, that was a key intention. Of my going on Right Response Ministries was to get the big libertarians, basically like him, to respond because now they have to because I'm spreading this far and wide. So I'm hoping that this leads to him accepting an offer for a cordial debate with me because that would be epic. It will be genuinely very informative. But I will be straight up right now. I genuinely believe I would take it out because I believe I'm competent in a live debate, but I also have the material on my side because like we've both given our arguments far and wide, and I think it's it's just unbelievably clear who's got the better case, in my humble opinion.
And if you want a completely neutral third party as a moderator, as a Romanist, I will be the moderator if you want.
I don't know if your person is neutral though.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, maybe someone else.
Oh man, but yeah, that's that's happening.
Oh, this is too good. All right, well, I will. Well, thanks for joining in. I got stuff coming up on the channel. In fact, I got an upcoming video. I'm kind of delayed on it. We know that in 1453, Constantinople falls to the Turks, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, Paul, I'm going to ask you if you know this. Do you know, prior to 1453, what year they tried to take it prior to that?
I don't.
It's 1422. Okay. So, yeah, and I've got the primary source on that. And a preview. The Turks, not only did they have artillery and troops and all these things, they had a prophet who claimed to be a descendant of Muhammad.
Ooh,
that's getting spicy. All right, so yeah, that'll come out soon. Go check out Paul's channel. Just called The Other Paul, because his stuff is always top notch. Cameron Bertuzzi, Jamila White, all that stuff. And yeah, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in Australia or a country that's not as good, I say God bless and have a good day. Bye.